What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to my channel. My name is Eric and I am so pumped that you are here today. Hey look, today we're going to be going through a tutorial on how I edit my photos for my Instagram feed. Over the past couple of weeks I've been getting a couple of DMs and people asking me what do I do to edit my photos. So today I'm going to walk you through step by step on what I do. Essentially I use 3 apps that are my go-to apps when it comes to editing photos for my feed. And I'm going to show you exactly how I do that. But before we get into that, hit that subscribe button so that way you can stay posted every single time I put a video out, just like this one. Let's get into it. Now, as of late, my Instagram feed has been very monochromatic. I've been sticking to the blacks and the whites and the grays, and I really haven't been including a whole lot of color in my photos. If there is, it's very small, but it's definitely not the main focus of the photos. And essentially I achieve that by adjusting the brightness and the contrast and the exposure, removing a whole bunch of color, and if there is a color that I want to isolate, I'll either select that and I'll make sure I edit everything around it, or I'll just isolate that individual color specifically and I'll remove that all together. But the first app that you're going to need when you're going to edit your photos, for me, I use Lightroom, which is free in the App Store. So I'm going to go ahead and open up that right now. Okay. So I'm going to go through and I'm going to open up Lightroom right here on my mobile. And you're going to hit that little plus icon. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to choose this photo of this cup of coffee that I shot today while I was at the coffee shop. It was around 4:30, 5 p.m., which is why I got some really cool shadows in the shot. But so essentially, when I'm shooting my photos for my Instagram feed, because I'm trying to keep a consistent feed and a consistent look, I'm even looking for backgrounds that match that aesthetic, right? So I have a cup of coffee and the coffee cup is white itself, but I have it sit on white marble. Now, because you're shooting in a restaurant with light and windows and things like that, you're naturally gonna get some colors that you may not want in your feed. So for me, one of the things that I always do after I kind of adjust my base settings is I'll go and remove the color. But first, let's go ahead and we'll adjust things like exposure and the contrast. So I go ahead and I click on light, and that brings me up some sliders. So normally, the first thing I do is I slide the exposure just a little bit to the right, depending on the time of the day. Again, I'm always leaning on making my photos a bit brighter as opposed to darker. The next thing I'll do is I'll adjust the contrast. Now, if I'm going for a photo that's a little bit more punchy, I'll bring the contrast up. But in this case, I'm actually going to drag the contrast down because I want this photo to be a bit softer, like kind of to reflect the time of the day when I shot this. Highlights I bring down because you really lose a lot of detail the more that they're brought up. And you may be thinking, well, if I slide the highlights down, I'm losing a lot of that white. But we're actually going to adjust the white specifically, not only in the slider for the white, but we're also going to adjust it later in its own specific app. So I go ahead and I slide the highlights down. I bring the shadows up just a tiny bit. And like I said before, we're going to go ahead and we're going to move the whites up because, again, for me in my feed, I like to have the whites pretty bright. So I'm going to bring that probably all the way up to 30. Moving on to the black, I just kind of dip those a little bit. So that way it does give me some separation from my light tones and my dark tones. So now I'm going to hit on this little temperature guy and I'm going to select the color. And the first thing I do before I do anything is I click on mix. So I click on the mix, and for me, doesn't matter at all. It's just a personal preference. I always start with editing out all the blues first. So I go ahead and I click on the blue slider and I start right in the middle at saturation, and I slide that saturation all the way down. And then with the luminance, I kind of bring that up again. Anything that was blue in that photo before still actually has value, and so we're going to make sure that we slide that up so that way it looks a bit brighter. Next, I'm going to click on the turquoise. I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to drag that completely out. And then I like to go ahead and click on the yellow, and you guessed it, we're going to drag the saturation down. Now here's something that you have to be careful with when you're editing a photo of coffee. And actually this is kind of twofold. If you're editing a photo of coffee or you're editing a photo with you in it, if you adjust oranges too much, you're gonna get like a really faded, unattractive looking photo because a couple things are orange tone. cups of coffee, and skin tone. So we want to make sure that we adjust that as minimally as possible. For me, I'm actually going to bring it up since it is the only color that I do have in the photo. I want to make sure that it's being represented the right way. So that looks pretty good. Once we're done with that, we go ahead and we hit done. I scroll over to detail and I adjust the sharpening. For a shot that's been shot on a mobile device like an iPhone or another phone like a Samsung or something like that, because it's a mobile photo, it can really handle the sharpening being adjusted. If I shot this on my DSLR, my digital camera, I would want to go ahead and do it in like Lightroom on my computer because that would have a little bit more control. But for editing on the phone, we shot the photo on the phone. When we're editing on the phone, it usually takes to the sharpening very, very well. Last thing I usually do really quick is on optics, I remove chromatic abrasion, which essentially, if there's any weird light streaks that came into the photo or some light fringing that happens in some edges, it actually removes that. And then I go ahead and I click enable lens correction. Every camera, no matter how big or how small or where it's at, the lens of the camera is curved or it's beveled, and this essentially just adjusts for that and tries to make the glass as straight as possible. So I go ahead and I tap that. Now that looks pretty good. Again, now to check our work, we can always do that hard press to see what it looked like before, and we can see the before, and now we see after. So once I'm satisfied with the image that I have in Lightroom, I go ahead and I save that. So we're gonna hit save the camera roll, and then we're gonna go ahead and click maximum available. This may take a moment. Cool, it's saved. Okay. Now that we have our photo saved, what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and open up VSCO Cam. It is another free app that you can get from the App Store. There are some filters within the app and some features within the app that you do have to pay for. But there are tons and tons of free, essentially, presets or filters that you can add to the photos that make them look however you want. But for this example, I'm going to use the ones that I normally use. So we need to hit the plus sign at the top right corner. We're going to hit that plus sign. That's going to allow us to import the photo that we just saved. So go ahead and click on that. Go ahead and hit import. And now we're going to have this icon here that has the slider. So we'll click on that. We'll scroll on over to our filter. Again, for me, on every single picture that I have on my Instagram feed at the moment, I have some variation of this specific filter with the strength adjusted for really, really strong to very, very light. But I apply that filter to every single photo because that, again, helps keep the feed look pretty consistent. We're going to go ahead and click on S2, and it looks pretty good. If you double click on it after you've already clicked on it, it's going to give you a slider, and then we can go ahead and adjust how strong we want that filter to be on. To be honest, I like how bright it is, how strong it is all the way at 12, so we're going to go ahead and leave it. After I go ahead and I get the image the way I want, I hit this button right here and it's going to give me a number of different options. I go ahead and I hit adjust right off the bat and I crop all of my Instagram photos to 4:5. And once I have that crop setting where I want it, I usually, again, I try to stick to the rule of thirds and try to keep the subjects of my photos kind of in those intersecting lines. So I go ahead and I hit that check mark when I am done. And then again, if I wanted to further edit this more, I have options like sharpen and clarity that I can adjust in VSCO. Again, it's going to be up to you. I encourage you to play around with those settings within that app and see what works out for you. See what you don't like, see what you do like. Again, everything when it comes to editing photos, especially on your phone for your Instagram feed, it's all trial and error. So that's kind of the fun in it. So I like how this photo looks so far. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to hit save. Hit these three dots so I can actually export it. Save the camera roll actual size. Now for most people, you're ready to go. You can post this bad boy to Instagram. But for me, I'm just gonna try to brighten up some of these whites a tad bit more. So the last app that I use is Facetune. Now you do have to pay for it. I think it's like $3.99 or it's $4.99 or something like that. But for me, it's a huge value because it allows me to, edit the whites. Essentially what it's for is it's like adjusting and smoothing out your face or like whitening teeth, but I predominantly use it for whitening up coffee cups and whitening up plates and whitening up buildings. So that's what I use it for. So once we go ahead and hit that camera button, we'll hit open photo and we'll go into our photos and we'll select the photo we just edited. Okay, now that we're here, we're gonna hit this little toothbrush symbol that's going to be whitened. And what it allows you to do is it essentially just allows you to brush in the areas where you want the white to be brightened up. So we're just going to use our finger and we're going to just kind of paint over the areas. And what it's going to do is it's going to whiten that up. Now you can't really see what we just did, but if you hit this button here in the corner, you can see the adjustment being made. So if we press the button and then we let go of the button, we can see what we painted on. So I usually go around, if it's a coffee cup, I go around the rim, I go around the handle, and even I'll go around some of the area that's outside the plate because I just noticed that there is still some yellowing that I want to take care of. Now, if this was going to be a photo that I posted for, you know, my actual feed, I would take time and I would zoom in and I would get as detailed as I could. But for the sake of this tutorial, you get the idea. So once you have it exactly where you want, that's the last step for me. I go ahead and I hit that check mark, and now I am good to go. Again, top right corner, and I hit save to camera roll, and you are good to go. Once you have that photo saved, it's business as usual. Open up Instagram and select that photo. Go ahead and throw it in your feed. Like I said, I'm no professional on Instagram by any means, but I do enjoy having a nice consistent feed on my Instagram so that way everything just looks aesthetic. It looks very neat. It looks very put together. When you come to my Instagram page, I want you to feel good about it, good about yourself. So that's kind of what I do. That's my workflow that I go through when I'm editing a photo, and I hope this helps. If you enjoyed this video and you made it all the way to the end, two things. One, you're a rock star. But two, go ahead and hit that subscribe button for me and give me a thumbs up on this video. And let me know in the comments if you use VSCO Cam or you use a different app like Snapseed. I'd love to hear about it. I'd love to know what you do or what you use or what you don't use. Also, you can always follow me on my Instagram page at I'm Eric Brown Jr. And I will see you on the next one.